Hello, everyone. Welcome back to SureFire Live. I'm your host, Mark Stoner, and excited to be here and talk to you again this week about all things chimney. Tonight, we have a special guest, Tim Reed, and he's a guy that I've heard his name around the industry for a very long time, and I kept hearing Tim Reed, and I even ran into him a couple times barely, but we actually I got to know him better recently and looking forward to knowing him even better moving forward. And he's just an innovative guy, has got a lot of great ideas. He's been around the industry a long time, and I'm super excited to have him on the show tonight. I've got a couple early comments. First comment, hey, Chad Murray. Hey, buddy. Thank you for that message today. I hope you get feeling better. You better get better. We're going to have to come after you. And Cody, hey, it's chimney time. Let's get it. Great to have you guys with us. So with that being said, let's bring on Mr. Tim Reed. Hey, Tim, how are you?
Hey, Mark, how you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Oh, man, I'm so glad to have you on. So, man, here we got another Alan Reed fan. Tim Reed rocks, has helped me many times with clients. I don't know anyone that knows anyone more about hearth than Tim. What, dude? I mean, come on. That's awesome. So
That's gracious. That's gracious.
Okay.
Thanks, Alan.
Yeah, Alan's an awesome guy. So a lot of people know you, but some people don't know you. So who is Tim Reed? How did Tim Reed get in this business?
You know, it was the old-fashioned way by accident. I think that's the way that a lot of people get into this business. So my background, I'm going on about 15 years in the industry, and I started out when I was playing guitar in a failing punk rock band up and down the West Coast. And my future father-in-law called me up one day and said, hey, I need help installing a wood insert. And I had no idea what a wood insert was, but I knew that I needed money. So I showed up, and that was how I got into it.
So failing punk rock band, were you any good?
That's in the eye of the beholder. I got some skeletons in my closet on YouTube, and you can be the judge of that. But what was funny is this. So I worked for my father-in-law as a very mediocre installer for about 4 years. Like, no one that's watching this would have hired me. It was by the grace of God that he didn't can me. But through the course of time, I did kind of learn my way into the industry through the installation channel, which was awesome. And even to this day, it has been the base of like everything that has happened since. So I worked for him for about 4 years. I moved up to Portland. I live in Oregon. I moved from a small college town up to Portland, and I got a sales job for about 6 years working with a 2-store mom and pop retailer. They did a really good job with kind of some of the premier brands in the industry. And then about probably, I don't know when this was, 7 years ago, a company called Fireside Home Solutions called me up. They were a really big new construction company. They did, thousands and thousands of new construction fireplaces a year, but they didn't do a lot in the retail space in Oregon. And so they hired me to build out their retail division. And so for the last, 7 years, I worked for Fireside. The last few of those, I was managing 5 showrooms in the Pacific Northwest, 2 in Portland and 3 up in Seattle. And then I left my job about 2 years ago to do whatever it is I do now. Still trying to figure that out.
Well, let's talk about that. You've got a podcast, and you have basically a hearth sales consulting business and like a new software company. Is that right?
Yeah. So, for me, the podcast kind of birthed about 3 years ago now. Actually, our 7th season starts in just a week and a half here or so. And it's pretty crazy for me to look back because it was basically 3 years ago that the podcast started. And the heart behind it was that for me, coming up in the industry, I didn't have a lot of people to teach me things. I had some owners and managers and some sales reps, but there wasn't a shared community of how to get better. There's like a really tight-fisted mentality of I've got my secrets and you can't know them. And when the podcast started, it was just the idea of, hey, I found some things that have worked really well, and I'm going to make a strategic bet that if I share my secrets, it's actually going to make me better because it will open up a community of dialogue, and I can learn from other people and they can learn from me. And so about 3 years deep on the podcast, that's been super fun. And there's a software program that, we can talk about kind of how it started later, but the idea basically is like, it's really hard to buy a fireplace for customers. And part of the reason it's really hard to buy a fireplace is that it's really hard to sell a fireplace. And so from running all these showrooms, right, we had to figure out like, how do we duplicate ourselves and how do we make it easier and easier to sell fireplaces so it becomes easier to buy them? And so, yeah, that's the journey that I've been on. With my consulting work, it's a blessing for me that I feel like the main thing I do is the podcast. We have a community called the Firetime Network, and then I've got the software program WhyFire. And so speaking and consulting is really just icing on the cake. And what's been cool with that is by not having to rely on that for my income, it allows me to be a little bit pickier, but also I think the way that I approach it is I approach everything as a project. So like for my model, I always look at like, you could hire me for, a number of months on end, but what I would rather do is let's find a project and let's attack that project and get it done. And then you can decide whether you want to hire me again or not for another project. So that's kind of the way that I approach it. And between all those things, I've got a job somewhere in there.
I like that. So let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about what you do for hearth shops, because I've heard really great things about the system you've developed for coming in, consulting, and working through the sales process of fireplaces. So let's talk about how you do that. Well,
Mark, I think it's probably similar to what you do on the chimney side. So I first heard of you, I don't know when, 7 years ago through the Blue Collar Proud podcast when Taylor and Carter were doing that. And, as we met a couple times here and there since then, but watching you on the chimney side, I think what worked really well is that you were a practitioner. So because you were in the trenches, you had actually built your own business, and the information that you shared wasn't theory, and it wasn't just something that like you learned in a college course or you read in a business book. Those things may be true, but you actually distilled them and run them through the gambit and the filter to say, this is how it works in my business. And you can take it or leave it, but like you can't argue with it because it's what we do and it works. And I think that on the hearth side, we've tried to very humbly do the same thing when it comes to going into a business. Myself and my business partner, Grant Falco, we try to come in and we will look at a business kind of from top to bottom. And generally me and Grant will split up. I'll take showroom, sales, and marketing. Grant will take warehouse, installation, and service. And then we kind of meet back in the middle on holistic business operation. And basically what we do is we kind of go in, and what we want to do is kind of point out the big rocks, right? So like in a lot of businesses, there's a lot of little things that, we could do to improve, and no business is perfect, but very often there's a few really basic rocks that if we can overcome those, we're on the right path where we're going to figure the rest out ourselves. So like one of the big things for me, for instance, when I go into a showroom is, in general, I want to walk through the showroom and ask with every single fireplace on the floor, why is this here? And an answer might be, well, because it's the large size that this company makes. And I'll say, okay, why is it on your floor? Because this large size a company makes, it's not a reason for it to be on your floor, right? What problems of your customers does this specifically solve? What situations does this get into? How does this give you a competitive advantage looking at what is in your marketplace? So that's one of my favorite things to do. I literally did this. I was in St. Henry, Ohio, just 5 days ago, and we went through this with a company there, and it was so awesome to see the wheels turning. This business had been doing it for a long time, and they were already a successful business, but it was like they had permission to say, you know what, we don't have to show that. Like we could actually simplify our showroom, or we could do something different here, because instead of thinking like, do I have every size covered, or have I represented adequately this manufacturer's line? Instead, we're asking the question, what problem of my customers does this directly solve? And if it doesn't solve their problem, and that's evidenced by how many quotes and how many sales I get out of that unit, let's pull it and either put something else in, or actually in this case with this one company, I recommended that they remove about 7 displays and put in 3 seating areas instead. So that's just that's a taste of it. But for me, I get so much life out of that, because ultimately, like I want retailers in our industry to win. And I would describe a retailer either as a sweep or a hearth store, mom and pop, blue collar business that is getting pummeled from every direction with regulation on one side, with e-commerce on the other. And I believe that small businesses should have a fighting chance in that battle, and hopefully I get to help clients do that.
Dude, I love how you stated that, the e-commerce on one side, the regulation on the other. And that's so true. I saw some of your handiwork, and I'm sure they won't mind me saying the Felgemachers up there in
Oh yeah.
Buffalo. And I know you worked with them. And that was the first time I'd actually seen some of your ideas in a real showroom experience and kind of change their thought process. And in that, they talked about how you walk through the showroom and kind of just what you said, why is this here? And then
Yeah.
you changed up the just the buyer's, the way the buyer looks at the thing. You really, the system I saw you do, you really looked at it through the eyes of the consumer better than
Yeah.
anything I've ever seen. Is that kind of what the main goal is?
Yeah, that's exactly it, man. I appreciate you saying that, Mark. I think in their case, they're in a situation where Buffalo is a market that, as I look at like the statistics, should be exploding, right? Like you got a lot of people in that area. It's freezing cold. There's a lot of natural gas. And as me and Grant prepared for it, part of us coming in was to help Felgemachers identify which product lines should we try to get our hands on, and then from there, how should we build the showroom? So as we started researching the Buffalo market, we looked around and we're thinking like, man, like there's a ton of opportunity here. And as we called up sales reps, a lot of sales reps were like, yeah, it's kind of a soft market for us. And we're like, there is something like that's weird. It's weird that we're in a market this far north and there's a dense population and it's not a major market. But as we approach their showroom, they have an underdog mentality because they're coming into it from the sweep side. And what's awesome is they don't have 30 years of bad habits to erase. Instead, they've got a hunger to grow their business, especially in their company. They've got a humility that is, man, unparalleled between the way that the three brothers and sisters work together, and they were ready to go after it. So what we looked at is saying, okay, we are going to be really specific with going after product lines that give you some protection, because we want to create a sales system that makes it so easy that someone can't just go and say, I'll get you that unit for $25 less. And so what we wanted to do is when a customer walks into the showroom, if you think about this, like, how much should a customer budget for a fireplace? Like they have no idea. I always give this example, like, when was the last time you bought a sprinkler system? Like how much should you budget for that? I mean, me and my wife bought one like 5 years ago, and it's like, what do we pick? Like I have literally no idea. I've never bought one. When I go online, there's no information to help me, and nobody I know has bought a sprinkler system. So in that sense, we just picked a number. We're like, I don't know, $3,000, but like that number could have been 20 grand. It could have been 10. Like we literally had no idea. And that's what happens a lot of the time when people walk into a fireplace store is they have no idea what to budget. And then what happens most often is when you walk in, and one of the things we try to do is we try to secret shop a lot. So like in the last 2 years, we probably secret shopped like, I guess 30 or so different hearth retailers. And most often when you walk into a retailer and someone greets you, they say, hey, are you looking at an insert or a built-in? And if you think about that, like a customer can't answer that question. I don't know what an insert is. I don't know what a zero clearance or a built-in or a prefab is. So we're already speaking in French when our customers speak English. And then we make it even more difficult by showing the customer a wall of black boxes that to us look different because this one's got the two-stage burner. This one's got, pick your proprietary ignition system. Oh, this one's got direct vent technology, or this one's vent free. But to a customer, there are a bunch of black boxes. And we speak way over our customers' heads, as opposed to answering like the two fundamental questions a customer has. Like when a customer, and this is true whether you're in the field or you're in a showroom, but when you encounter a customer in their home or in the showroom, they've got two questions. They want to know, number one, what's going to work in my space? Because that's the reason it's the reason they hired you to come out to their house or they came to your showroom. Number one, what's going to work in my space? And number two, what's it going to cost? And there might be more questions, but those are the fundamental two. And honestly, Mark, from secret shopping in the last 2 years, 30 or so hearth retailers, I have never even come close to having those questions answered by a retailer.
Are you serious? So
I'm dead serious.
I noticed that, like with the Felgemachers, you had done quite a bit of research on the market, a lot of research on like what you just said. And then they said when you came to them, you just gave them a ton of information they didn't know about as part of is like the research you did going into doing this consulting with their market and what they're up against was just incredible. So do you do that with every client that brings you on board?
In general, we do. So one thing that me and Grant do is we limit the amount of trips that we do per year, honestly, to like 3 or 4. We don't like to be away from our families, and we want to give these clients everything that we have. So in general, we'll research the market pretty heavily. It depends a little bit on the needs of the client, but we want to figure out who's in the area, who's selling what, who's got the quote unquote premier lines, who doesn't. Because in some cases, we're going to recommend that they pick up a couple lines. In some cases, we might recommend that they drop a couple lines. It just depends a lot on the market. So with Felgemakers, we looked around and we just looked at pick all the major brands. Okay, who's selling Travis? Who's selling HHT? Who's selling Valor? Who's selling Cozy Heat? Who's selling Enviro? And then we go on their website. So we start looking at what kind of attention do they give this manufacturer on their website. We go a step further. We look at how many brands do they carry. In general, the more brands someone carries, the worse they're going to be as a retailer because the sales team is going to be too disconnected. They're not focused enough. So we look at all those things, and then we look at, wait a minute, what about this line? They don't seem to have representation here. What about this line? And those are good lines. So in the case of Felgemakers, that was what we did is we looked at where were the open spots in the market. And based on who the competition was, we started thinking about what are the stories that we can use in our showroom and in the field that are going to be better than the sales pitch that someone's going to get at the other hearth retailer. When it comes down to products, I'm circling back as a long roundabout answer to your question about their approach to the showroom. But when we think about the customer experience, a customer learning that this has 30,000 BTUs an hour, 5 different decorative fronts, and a 2-stage burner means nothing. No one's buying a fireplace for that reason. But someone is buying a fireplace if you were to say, hey, I know that you've had whatever it is. I know you've had this old gas log set in your house for the last 30 years. And every time you turn it on, you feel like you're taking your life into your hands, lighting it with a match. The thing with it is that even though it gives you a little bit of ambiance, I know you mentioned you want heat. And anytime you've got an open fireplace, it's actually taken all that heat your furnace has heated up. You've already paid to heat your house up. And that fireplace is sucking all of it out the house. So what's really neat is that no matter which one of these fireplace inserts you pick, we can slide this fireplace into your opening and seal your chimney up at the top. So before you've even turned this on, you're already saving money. And the best part is now when you hit the on button on your remote, you're not getting down on your hands and knees. You're not turning on the gas. This is going to automatically turn itself on, and it's going to warm your home up for about a quarter of the cost of your furnace. So we say that's a story. It's a story that they'll remember way more than 50,000 BTUs and 5 fronts and all this and that. So before we sell a product, what we want to do is through the buying experience, convince a customer that we can solve your problems. That's the approach that we took in the Felgemakers showroom. With every single product, we have a story for why we can solve your problem.
Oh, dude, that is so good. I love that. Couple questions for you that have popped up. And guys, I remind you, this is a two-way conversation. Anybody that's listening, you got questions for Tim, he's here to help. So first question from Jake Loeffler. What would you tell a sweep or chimney company if they're considering buying a local hearth shop?
I would say do it. And I mean, I don't know the details of the business. So you obviously want to make sure that you're buying it at a fair and reasonable price. But I think that from everything I've seen on the chimney sweep side, sweeps are hungry. Sweeps tend to be very humble. And like I said, with Felgemakers, they don't have 30 years of bad habits. I've had a friend graciously tell me that a lot of hearth retailers can be lazy. And that can be the truth because we can kind of get, and I'm guilty of this. Like I'm pointing the finger at myself. Like I'm always having to think about people don't just walk in the door. I can't just take this for granted. Like everybody that comes in is dead serious. But after 20 years, as you've gotten burned out from dealing with customers and had problem jobs, and you see the overhead and medical insurance for your people and all these things, it's easy to start writing customers off and taking them for granted. So the thing that I would say is for a chimney sweep, having a physical retail location validates your business. So when you're selling out of the back of your truck, that can actually be a good business model to make you some money, but it can get picked apart. It can be easy to say, hey, this is just some fly-by-night person. They're just selling out of the back of their truck. They don't have a showroom. They're not committed. And I'm not saying that's right, but I'm saying that is used against you. And
Sure.
so when you have a physical space of any kind, I think that it validates the retail side of your business in a really concrete way. And I think that the transition from chimney to hearth is a lot easier than most people think. I think the switch from hearth to chimney is much more difficult. Chad Murray might debate me on that, but I think it's much more difficult because sweeps understand customer service. Like, they understand asking for the business. They understand follow-up. And so for that reason, I think that I would go into it with your eyes open to make sure you pay a fair price. But I would say that if you can take the hunger and the tenacity that has, gotten you to where you are in the sweep business, I would say do it, because it will instantly validate. And one thing I would say with that too, this might step on some toes, but one suggestion I'd have is make the hearth business the identical name to your sweep business. Do not make them separate names. It destroys any brand equity that you've brought up in your chimney business.
So let me play devil's advocate for a second, because I'm on the other side of that. I've been not a huge fan of hearth retail. And really, I think if your message had got to hearth retailers sooner, they would be doing better. But I quote statistics on most of these hearth shops are flat or dying in a lot of cases. Their sales models are antiquated, and I argue that, hey, I go into 30 homes a day with iPads fully stocked with my stuff.
Yeah.
My installers know how to put it in. I'm going to be accurate. Most of my customers never show up in a hearth showroom. They never even know to go there because they didn't know they had a problem. I showed it to them. So I love your approach, though. And if I would have talked to you before this, I'd probably be looking at hearth shops. But tell me what I worry about hearth shops. I worry about the brick and mortar models in a lot of cases. Tell me why I'm wrong, or why I should look at it differently.
Well, first off, I don't think you're wrong. I think it's just a question of kind of what you want out of your business. So one thing that we have to remember is that installation is the lid on every business. So if your installation pipeline is full and your profits are good without a hearth retail location, I would say don't get one. But if you think that you're able to hire more installers and scale, then I think that the hearth shop will do a couple things for you. So one is I think it will get you sales that wouldn't have come through the in-home models. Like, you will get people finding you on the internet, coming into your showroom, that may not have come in otherwise. I would say the other thing is, like, I know people that literally sell a single fireplace for $100,000. And, there's work that's out there to be had that is like very, very high end. And it is difficult. I'm going to say impossible, but it's difficult to make if you don't have a physical customer buying experience. And so I think that the two are not mutually exclusive. Like, if you're tapped out in your installations and you're already bursting at the seams, a retail showroom is only going to make your life worse. But if you've got a scalable system, like Mark, you teach, if you're able to duplicate installers and run people through a funnel, and by the end they come out able to, install product, all of a sudden the retail showroom is a catalyst for business that probably wouldn't have come in otherwise. And like I said, I do think that there's a validation once you've got that physical showroom. It doesn't have to be big. It can be 1,200 square feet, but I think that there's a validation that happens in the eyes of certain customers.
I agree with you 100%. I know for a fact that the hearth shops around town get these bigger jobs than I get. I get a lot of good sized jobs, but they get the really big installations, and their install crews aren't nearly as good as ours. But you have hit it on the head. I believe that completely. A couple questions more. Let me see what this is. One of our distributors has a raw isocurrent right when you walk in the door. Oh, like as a model to sell? That's kind of rough. So Jason Fox says, warm up your home for 25% of the cost is not really true. You can heat up a single space of the insert for less than a furnace, but only one area of the fireplace, not the whole home, and only when used in certain ways. I would think we would.
Jason's exactly right. And what he just said is exactly what we should tell a customer. So like one of the cool things is Mitsubishi had a commercial for ductless heat pumps on TV that's brilliant. And what they did in the TV commercial is a guy came into his kitchen to wash his hands, and he opened up his faucet to wash his hands, and every faucet in the house turned on and the water was just running. And then he shut the faucet off when he's done and all the water turns off. That is a central furnace system. So one of the best stories to tell is exactly what Jason just said, right? So when a customer comes into a showroom, a fireplace is a luxury item, right? In most cases, it's a luxury item. Most homes have a central furnace system. This is why it's so important to ask the customer questions up front to get to understand the problem. But if the home has a central furnace system, we tell that story. Hey, Mark, I'm so glad that you came in today. And it's awesome that you have a home built in 1975 that has a central furnace. What that furnace is really good at is keeping the whole house at a relatively stable temperature. But what we want to do with these products is we want to create a comfort zone in the area that you spend your time in for a fraction of the cost of turning that furnace up and down. And so, you can tell that story. Like imagine if you were to, go to wash your hands in the kitchen, and every time you opened up the faucet, like every sink in the house turned on, plus your garden hose outside. That's not an efficient way of washing your hands. So what we can do is create a comfort zone in the area where you spend your time. And this is going to cost you like 20 cents an hour, and your furnace will never come on or go off, right? Use the furnace to do what it's good at. Use the fireplace to do what it's good at. Again, that's a story that we're telling a customer. We're not, we'll get to product eventually, but the story that Jason just brought up is dead on, and it should be told to every customer that has any kind of a central heating system.
I love that. I have never heard it's talked about like that, and that's fantastic. So Chad Murray said he agreed with you. That was earlier when you mentioned him. Facebook user says the hearth shops and fireplace suppliers are ancient technology, especially the way both operate. And he said this talk is refreshing. Yeah. I think Tim is breathing new life into it, because then Chad Murray says, I think Tim is the proof the fireplace shop is not dead. Yeah. Stuff.
We don't want it to be, Mark, but the truth is that those comments are correct. If you look at the average hearth retailer, I mean, a lot of the age skews 60 or north. A lot of businesses don't know if they're making money or losing money, and don't have a lot of systems and processes in place that would make the business valuable to a buyer. And I say that like my heart is heavy to say that. And you look at the next 10 years, I think that we're going to see a lot of businesses going under in the next 10 years, or just closing their doors. And in Portland, Oregon, where I live, I can think of 3 competitors that used to be major hearth retailers. One of them used to be like a top 10 in the nation that just straight shut their doors. They couldn't find anybody to buy their business. And that's not what we want. So like now is the time for a hearth retailer to get serious about it. We sell a product that for 5 months of the year is in such demand that we don't have to be good salespeople. We can kind of skate by. And for many companies, they just ride the other 7 months, just tightening up their belts until they get back to that busy season again. And if, that's okay if that's what you want, but what that, it doesn't breed a business. It just means that you have kind of by the skin of your teeth eked out a job for the last 30 years. And, my hope would be that we can challenge ourselves to build something sustainable that does make it for the next generation.
I've always felt, and maybe I'm wrong because I come from the chimney side, but I felt for a while almost like hearth guys look down on us chimney sweeps. I felt like when we were
you think so?
I felt like they're better than us, or they always talk like down to us, and it was just a weird thing. I thought us chimney guys, we were kind of a brotherhood and stuff, and the hearth guys are kind of a different breed. But my biggest thing now is they need to know service. They need to sell maintenance plans. They need to sell annual service and come out and treat the chimney as a whole thing instead of just getting an appliance in there and getting out. Like they literally didn't want to do chimney sweep, chimney repair, and all that. And I think that has really hurt them, because that's a big chunk of the lifetime value of the customer.
Yeah, agreed, Mark. Seth Godin has a phrase that he uses with marketing, and it's people like us do things like this. And the way that works is like if you pay $300 for a service call in your fireplace or for a chimney sweep on your home, you have friends that pay $300 for a service on their fireplace or a chimney sweep in their home. And what chimney folks have had the ability to do is gain repeat business and leverage a customer base to keep marketing costs down. And so this isn't a marketing conversation, but one of my things I rail against with both manufacturers in our industry and many retailers is I believe it is literally impossible to buy your way into a brand. We're not Coke or Pepsi or Mercedes with hundreds of millions of dollars to flood the market with for 30 years. It is literally impossible to advertise your way into creating a brand. So to me, when you look at metrics like impressions and that sort of thing, I don't care. I don't care how many impressions I get. I care how many customers walked into my door or how many leads I got. And with that, what I will say with chimney sweeps is that while none of our businesses and even none of our manufacturers are ever going to be big enough that they're a household name. It's never going to be Wrigley chewing gum or Coke or Pepsi. Correct. But we have the ability to create a tribe where we do have a brand within that tribe, right? So as Ashbusters goes and services however many homes a year, 5,000, 10,000 homes a year, right? Over the course of 10 years, we're talking about 100,000 customers. And let's say that we've done really good work on 85% of those homes, right? We can continue, and you know this, Mark, we can continue to remarket to them, to offer our services, to win referral work. And all of a sudden marketing costs go down. And it's people who know us and trust us that we've created a brand with for part of our tribe. And that's my whole thing is I could care less about becoming a household name. I'd rather build a tribe of people who think I give value, and I'm just going to trust the results that if I am giving value, that tribe will grow and grow and grow to the level that is appropriate for my business.
Oh, dude, you're so good. And then Pat Jenkins says that's gold. And so a couple more questions, a bunch of questions, man. You're hitting some nails here. So Chad says, I think Tim. Oh, we already said that. So this one says not dead, but it's waning. So we've talked about that. Also, this Facebook user says, if it wasn't for retail pricing given by fireplace manufacturers, most fireplace shops would be out of business. They are told by the manufacturer how much to charge. Yeah, that's a fact. What do you find in that? Did they really, a lot of hearth shops don't know their numbers?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying it's easy, but I was talking with a distributor about this, and I was telling him, because you're buying through distribution, anyone who's buying from you is taking a margin hit versus buying direct. And there's a ton of value in buying from a distributor, right? They've got great freight programs. They keep stuff in stock. We're a manufacturer. You got to buy in bulk. But I was telling them, why don't you just produce a cost list with a margin multiplier and just let dealers make the retail price? And they're like, we've tried it, and our dealers say they don't know what to charge. So there is, and that's not every dealer, but that is true, And I'll leave it there. That's a true statement. And for me personally, I feel like, a business should be able to choose what they sell product for. I guess on the flip side of that, I will say this is going to sound like a contradiction, but it's actually a juxtaposition. My belief is that manufacturers should be advertising pricing on their website, because it's kind of similar to I bought a Toyota 5 years ago. And if I go to Toyota's website and there's no pricing, what am I doing? I'm hitting the back button. I'm going to BMW or to Ford's website. So I believe that pricing, it's one of the fundamental questions customers have and must be addressed online, I believe, by the manufacturer. But this is the asterisk to that. I'll say that there's a huge amount of variation to this based on vent pipe, installation, location. And I believe there's a way to navigate that to still give the customer a contextual price from their local dealer that sets the dealer up for success. So that's kind of a loaded answer that might sound like a contradiction, but I don't think it is.
Well, you kind of, when we get into your WhyFire program, that's exactly what you're kind of doing for the customer.
Yeah, exactly.
So quite a statement from Alan Rush. Just because you rock at in-home sales doesn't mean you can sell or be successful in retail. Tim has come into at least 3 of my clients to help them with them master hearth, as it really is a completely different business. They can complement each other, but they're nowhere close to being the same. You need a professional like Tim if you're going to dive into retail, as there are so many pitfalls that will empty your bank account if you don't know what you're doing.
Man, that's so gracious. That's so gracious. One thing I think about though that is true with that. So I believe that in-home sales is the most powerful model, and every sweep that is watching this knows that. Like, in-home sales is significantly more powerful than the showroom, and that's why, Mark, to your point, like, why do we need a showroom? Well, again, like if you've maxed out your installation crews, and like, you don't. But what I find when I go into hearth retailers, and this is going to be like traditional hearth retailers that have been doing this for 30 years, my whole thing is start doing in-home visits, because that's where the sale is made. And an in-home visit is it's not like going to measure to see if a fireplace will work. It's a sales call. So I believe that the two are powerful. And I think that Alan hit it on the head. One thing that I wanted to hit on for anyone that's thinking about going into the retail side, and Alan made a good point of this. It's really tough if you haven't been down that road before. Like, what do I show? Which brand is going to be the best? What models are going to have pitfalls? Because if you're coming into it from the sweep side, where maybe you're familiar but not super intimate with it, what you rely on is kind of hearsay, and it's super tough. Especially, this happened to me in Pennsylvania. We went into a retailer that was there, and we were walking through the showroom, and we walked into their main area, and we're looking at this big, beautiful fireplace. And we're going through asking about every fireplace. I said, hey, this is a great looking fireplace. Why is it here? And they said, this is one of this brand's best sellers. Now, as a backstory, this brand was one of the major hearth retail brands. Like, I would say they were the brand in the industry. And this company had worked really hard to win them. And they had actually gone 100%, where they literally everything that was on their floor was from this manufacturer. And this is a manufacturer that I love dearly. But I'm looking at this fireplace, and they said, well, it's one of their best-selling units. I'm thinking, this is not one of their best-selling units. And I said, I was like, wow, like, so how does it do for you? And they said, oh, it's great. Our customers love it. We sell a ton of them. And I was like, wow, that's really surprising to me, because this company does very little new construction work, like less than 10% of their business. And this fireplace is framed at 48 inches wide. Now, every standard ZC fireplace, direct vent or B vent that's been built into a house for the last 35 years frames at 42 inches wide, and then maybe 10% of them at 36, but none of them frame at 48. So as I look at this, I'm thinking, okay, so this fireplace is big enough. It will not work if anyone is replacing an existing zero clearance fireplace. It's too big. It means we got to rip down the whole wall, get an engineer, a remodeler. We're talking a $15,000, $20,000 project. So for anybody, and you don't do new construction work where this would be a great fireplace, right? There's no constraints. So I was like, this is really surprising to me, because that framing dimension is so big, it doesn't work in existing homes. And as I said it, they said, oh, you know what? It's actually one size smaller that we sell a ton of. We don't sell much of this one at all. And so what I told them is, unfortunately, I believe their sales rep was trying to make, his or her boss happy by, getting, their boss says, hey, we need to get more of these on the floor. The sales rep gets one on the floor because, like, yeah, it's a great looking fireplace, but it doesn't solve the problem of that dealer's customer, right? That dealer's customer has an existing home. There's Mr. and Mrs. Jones coming in that have a 30-year-old, crappy B vent, and they want to replace it with something that's more efficient. So all that to say, imagine like that times 30 with every model that you have on display. Like, you don't want to walk into a pitfall where you show something that you're not going to sell, or that by showing two, like for instance, if you show two different brands in your showroom that have two different stories, those sales stories might contradict each other. So you want to walk that really intentionally.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Cody Whitwood has a question, and then after this question, I want to get into your amazing software that you've built that kind of wraps a lot of this together. I want to give you plenty of time to show that. So Cody says, what would you consider to be an average cost of acquisition per customer versus the average ticket in a large metropolitan area?
That's a really tough question, and I'll say first off that I don't know, and anything I tell you is going to be fuzzy. So I know of some major markets that use a metric of like $300 per customer is about what they try to shoot for. I'll tell you that where I used to be in Portland, Oregon, we ran 2 showrooms, and our total marketing cost for the year, and at least in advertising that we did, was under $24,000. So like pretty minimal, $12,000 a showroom divided by quite a bit of sales. So for us, it was very, very little. I guess I would ask instead of looking at that, I might just ask a different question that might lead you to a really good answer. I would look at how am I advertising and how many leads am I getting out of it and what's happening with those leads. So like if you use like Home Advisor, for instance, what do you spend in Home Advisor? Let's just call it $25,000 for the year. So how many leads do we get? Let's say, I don't know what that is. Like, let's just say 250 leads, whatever the number is. And then how many of those do we win the in-home visit and how many of those do we win the sale? And what I would take a look at instead of, it's one of those things like if I can pay somebody $500 to make $1,000, I'll do that, every day of the week and twice on Sundays. And if I could pay someone $500 to make $501, I would still do that like all the time. So when it comes to advertising, I think that that's a good question, but the one that I might ask first would be measuring each of my spends and what kind of productivity do I get out of them? And when it comes to like, let's say doing like TV or radio or something like that, start asking the question, what do I get? And then I would say condense your marketing to the stuff that works. And then you can start to look at like, okay, so, Home Advisor, I'm paying $25,000 a year and I'm getting this. How many leads per month am I getting from my website? Because I'm probably getting hits on my website. What if instead of spending an extra, $10,000 a year on Home Advisor, what if I could spend $1,500 and I could work on like a really simple lead capture form or like a way to redesign the customer path for my products that makes it really easy for them to get an estimate from me. Those are the kind of questions that I would ask. And I think that by asking those questions, that the cost per acquisition will kind of sort itself out.
Yeah, great. On that. So Chad says the distributors and manufacturers do not help you at all. They over showroom you.
Well, I'll say it depends. Like, I think in many cases, Chad's right. But I mean, there are distributors out there that are, I think that there's distributors are the reason that we're going to be in business this year. I mean, like if you guys think that product shortages have been bad, just wait. Like the worst is yet to come for another 8-9 months. And I'm convinced that companies will go out of business this year because they don't have inventory on hand and there will literally be no inventory. I'd love to be wrong. And I'm kind of speaking a little bit hyperbolically, but I think that this year will be more difficult than 2007, 2008. And I think distributors are the only lifeline for our industry. That being said, there are manufacturers out there that do an amazing job of capturing customers, delivering qualified leads to their retailers, but there's not many. So I think that, Chad, you're correct. But I think that there are some bright spots out there for sure.
So let's talk about that really quick. Man, product is impossible to get. And you're saying from what you're seeing, man, you're just going to have to get through. There's not any bright spots. Is there any bright spots or anything that you think we should do as chimney guys or even hearth guys that are watching? Like, what are some good ideas?
The first thing I'll say is I don't know. I will say that like everything I hear from, and this is not just from like manufacturers, but like the companies that supply the parts to the manufacturers is if you think it's been bad now, it's only going to get worse. And that getting worse is probably going to last another 8 to 12 months. Again, I'd love to be wrong, but like the reality is that I think that that's where it is. So I think that being said, I would start making relationships with your distributors. Distributors, I think, are going to be our saving grace because they generally have more inventory even than manufacturers. There's always old stuff they have that they've wanted to close out. They haven't been able to move. And I'm not saying that they're going to keep perfect supply, but it's a good shot. They've got unprotected lines, so you could go after an unprotected line. And also, they've had order after order after order on standing PO with manufacturers that are slowly going to start coming in over the coming months. So what I would say to do is I would probably call up like 3 of your distributors. Maybe it's 1 or 2, but I would have a meeting with your rep and just say like, we're going to go all in on your products. So like if we have a showroom or if we're selling out of our van, we're only going to show your stuff, but you got to keep me supplied. So let's just pick a model. I don't care the brand. I don't care if it's Standing Pilot, IPI, but I'm going to commit to this, and I'll put 3 of them in my barn right now to commit.
Yeah.
But what I need you to do is we're going to have a weekly call. And the second that your inventory drops below whatever it is, like 5 or 10 on this model, let me know, and let me know what the next fireplace I'm going to start selling is. So like for customers, they may not get to choose between 5 models this year. They might get 1. But I think that I would start having those conversations right now with your distributors and see if through just a weekly cadence of communication, you guys can help each other transparently.
Yeah, that's a good point. Mr. Norris says, how many different lines should we show the customer while we're in the home? Is 3 too many?
I'd say in general, I would do this many. I do 1. Now, there's so much context here, and especially in a format like this where we're limited on time, you'll need to take everything that I say and digest it based on the context of your business and your situation. That's the first thing, is I'm painting with a broad brush. My thought is that in general, more lines confuses things. Like Donald Miller says, every time you hand a consumer a new piece of information, it's like handing them a bowling ball. So you got to be really careful with how many bowling balls you hand them. At the end of the day, if you're going to buy cabinets for your house, like how many brands of cabinets do you want to see? Do you want to see 5? Not really. Do you want to see 3? Probably not. Like what I would say to do is, before we show a product, we have to understand the customer's problem. And as we ask customer questions and we learn about the situation that they have, it's going to become super clear whether I should sell brand X or brand Y. So like, let's just take, for instance, just pick 2 fireplace lines. Let's just take like Valor, and let's take Cozy Heat, right? So like, let's just say that I'm talking to a customer and they say that they want to get a gas insert. It's really important to them. This thing is reliable in power outage, and they want to make sure that like they're in a high wind area and it's freezing cold out, right? Well, in this case, I'm probably going to show them a Valor. Now, I love Cozy Heat. I think they're one of the best companies in our industry. But in this situation, most of Cozy Heat stuff is all IPI, where Valor's got a pilot on demand that it takes no outside power. It's baked into their story that we don't need outside power. We don't have to have a fan on our fireplaces. You can run it off of AA batteries. And then that pilot on demand can actually stay on for a few days when the fireplace isn't in use, but then it will shut itself off. So like, that story that fits the customer really well. So from a manufacturer's perspective in general, I would try to stick with 1, at the absolute most 2. But then within that manufacturer, maybe you've got like a good, better, best, and maybe the good, better, best is even the same unit, but maybe the good doesn't have any options. The better adds a nice looking front, and the best adds like the annual maintenance package. That's the way that I would approach it. More lines tends to confuse things.
Yeah, we found that we do not like to do an option close at the end. Like if we show them 3 different things with different prices, we always wind up with the thing, great, thank you for your information, we'll get back to you, I've got to think about it. And to your point, you're going to come down that question process, and Alan teaches this all the time, to really deliver the thing that you think is going to best fit their needs after good discovery questions and good observation on your point. You can move to a couple others, but the more you move, the more you're going to likely not get that sale that we've found when you're trying to wrap it up. They're like, oh man, this is so much information, I'll get back to you.
Totally. Yep. We confuse people. We just blast them with information and they get confused. Now, this doesn't mean you don't give them choice. People want enough choice to make a decision, but not so much that they get overwhelmed. And so that's where you're going to have to nuance out what I said, that you want to be really careful with too many manufacturers, but within that, you do need to give them enough choice that they feel like they're not being penciled into just a corner.
Yeah. So, all right. Gosh, this hour is flying by. I'm like, we're 48 minutes in. I just feel like I started talking to you. Okay. So, to be respectful of your time, I'm so excited for you to show this product, because about several months ago, I saw Doug Hetch. He said, have you seen this WhyFire thing that Tim Reed has come up with? And I'm like, no. And so I looked at his website. I went through his thing, and I think it is so cool. So if you want to show your screen, or do you want to just tell people what it is, and then let's show your screen and maybe walk somebody through the process.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Mark. For me, the way that this was birthed was just the fact that like it's really hard to buy and sell a fireplace. If we look at it, like e-commerce is already on like the data that's reported 50% of fireplaces are already being sold online, and that's what's reported. So like my hunch is that even more, like we've already lost half the sales in the industry to e-commerce. And I think that there is a time and place for e-commerce, but I think that somebody with a physical business, whether it's a chimney sweep or a hearth retailer that actually has the ability to support and service products, deserves a fair shot. So for me, what I realized, this all started, we started tracking our estimate percentage. And in our showroom, we started tracking how many people came in and how many times you wrote up an estimate. And it was really low because it was super hard, right? I'm rooting through 5 different price books. I got a million different part numbers to sort out just for the customer to say, oh, can you bid out that color? And now I got to start all over from scratch. So we wanted to make an easy way to help somebody with knowing the right questions to ask, showing fireplaces that would work, and then pumping out an easy estimate. So WhyFire is a tool to do that. It's a tool to take somebody who has been selling for 30 years, but is slaving away with a giant pile of bids on their desk that it's taken 3 weeks to get them done. Like, what if every one of those could take you 20 seconds? Like, that's what we want to do. The other angle of it is like, let's say that you do have a showroom or you do have a new tech in the field and they're an amazing sweep, but they don't know everything about all the different brands. What if we knew we could ask the right questions and get guardrails for like, hey, in this home, here's the models that'll work. And if you click on this model, I get an instant price. So that's what we wanted to do. I'll show you right here, Mark. So like the first thing, like let's just say that we were inside of a customer's house.
Hang on, I can't see your screen yet.
I'm sharing it right now.
Okay,
I'm sharing it right now. Just a second.
And so I'll wait for it to pop up. Here it comes. Here we go. Okay. All right. So go ahead. Okay, I can see. There you go. Okay, I'm gonna make that the main screen. Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah. So like let's just say that we're inside of a customer's house and I have an iPad or some kind of tablet or laptop. So if I'm taking a look at this, the first thing that I can do is I can identify the situation that the customer has, right? Do they have a blank wall where by the time this is done, they want a built-in fireplace? Do they have an open fireplace that at one point used to burn wood that, they want to get an insert or a gas log set into? We go through freestanding stoves. We go through old style direct vent fireplaces, but like, let's just click on an open fireplace. So what'll happen here is it'll now prompt some questions. So I have this set up for someone that's walking into the showroom, but you can easily modify it for someone that's in the field as a sweep, right? So like in the showroom, we want to ask them, hey, is this your first time in our showroom? Yes or no? The reason that we ask that question is that data suggests that customers go to about 1.3, 1.4 hearth stores before buying. So if it's their second time in, we really want to make sure that we're asking them for a sale, right? So maybe we say, yes, it's our first time in. How'd they hear about us, right? A radio ad. You can do the same thing in the field. How'd you hear about our business? Capture that marketing information because this is going to tell you what's worth paying for in marketing. What's the reason that you're getting a fireplace? Oh, they want heat. They want to update the look of the house. Okay, awesome. Hey, how do you use this space? Okay, we use it for family time, entertaining, and in this weird COVID world we're in, we work in there. What do you want to burn? Wood, gas, pellet? Okay, perfect. Now, in the showroom, they may not have measurements of the fireplace. So if they say, no, we don't have measurements, we'll plug in some standard ones. But if you're in the customer's house, you can just take some measurements, right? So like what would be a typical width on a fireplace? Maybe 38 inches in the front, in the back, maybe 28, height of 26, and depth of like 24. Is that relatively fair?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Maybe a little short on the fireplace height.
Okay. So yes, we can go shorter too. Do you need help with installation on this project? Yes or no, they're going to self-install it. Is the fireplace on an inside wall or an outside wall? Is it a masonry fireplace or factory built, or do we not know? We want to make it really easy for a new salesperson or a new sweep to be able to answer these questions. Is the roof steep to walk on? No, it's simple to walk on. I can walk on it, but it's not easy. I can't walk on it, right? What design style is the home? We can say traditional. Is there anything in the fireplace already? Nothing yet, an old wood stove, right? Like these are the questions that we want to ask every step of the way. Now we can choose between giving a quote or an estimate. So like a quote is going to give a hard number where an estimate is going to give a range. So like, let's just say someone's in the showroom. We haven't been out to the house. We probably want to start with an estimate. If you're actually in the house, you'd mark that button quote, and it's going to give a hard number for that project right then and there.
Nice.
So it takes just a second, and basically the platform will say, hey, based on the answers to those questions, here's the fireplace models that'll work just for you. And the way that we have this set up is we have right now about 22 of the manufacturers loaded into it. So like, depending on who the dealer is and what models they sell, we can customize this obviously to only show the products that they sell. But like if I just click on this one right here, I can now talk to the customer about this model, and I have some very, high level information right here, and I've got a brochure with me, and then I can send them an estimate. So what we can do here is we can choose a decorative front. We can choose any accessories that we'd like to add with that fireplace. And then we click on a button that says, get my quote. So like what I could do right here for the customer is I would just punch in their name, their email address, and it takes like 15 seconds, and it's going to send them an estimate. So like right here, it'll pop up and say your quote's in the queue, punch in your information here, and I can type in my name is Mark Stoner, put in my email address, hit submit. And this is where it takes, 10, 15 seconds. But basically what this will do is it will send an estimate both to the customer and to you, the salesperson. And the way that the estimate works is there's no part numbers, and everything is bundle priced that's necessary for the job. And then the options and upgrades are itemized. So that way the customer gets choice on like, hey, do I want to add the ignition system for this? Do I want to add the remote control? There's the choice for them, right? So the unit is, is set, and I can show in a second, like we have the ability to give an estimate on another fireplace, but it's going to give them a really simple number. So what the salesperson can do is they can say, hey, Mrs. Smith, that estimate is in your inbox. Let me pull it up right now, and let's just take a look at it together. So you can pull it up, take a look at it, and they might say, hey, that looks great. You can ask for the sale. Or they might say, oh my gosh, that's way too expensive. What you can do is just scroll down and just say, you know what, let's bid you out for another one. And you can fire out as many estimates as it takes to be able to find the price range that's right for them. So what we like with that is it makes it really simple. And in just a second here, Mark, I'll show you what that looks like. Let me get to a different screen, and I'm going to show you what that estimate looks like. But that's the heart of the system right there, real quick.
Let me just say something real quick. One thing that I saw that you did for us, what you're doing for us and for others, is that you find out all the units that we already carry. Then you also ask for all of our pricing on piping, venting, and all those things we upload to you. So when if you're watching this for the first time, when he cranks out this estimate, this isn't something that Tim Reed came up with. This is something that you gave you guys information from my company. So this estimate is really very, very similar. It's what we charge, not what you made up. And so it's also one of the things that happens to a lot of my technicians is they get hooked on a certain line that they like to sell over and over and over again. And when I bring on a new line and a new opportunity, they just keep falling into their old habits. What this system does is it shows everything that's available every time. And the guys all of a sudden don't have to dig through those books or remember, because they just go to what's like, their jerk reaction. This thing just opens up every possibility that we have for them and makes it easy, just as easy. One is just as easy as another to quote it. So yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, Mark, to your point, no, that's exactly it. And that's why, onboarding a client for us, it takes a long time because there's a lot of information we have to get right with vent numbers, vent packages, installation. But yeah, exactly what you said. Like once you get this bid, so here's what it looks like, right? So you can see my screen with the email right here, right? Hey, Mark, thanks for taking the first steps to adding the perfect fireplace, attaches a PDF proposal. So if a customer opens up this PDF, they're going to see right here, okay, here's the details on the fireplace. Now I click that we're going to give an estimate range. If I would have clicked quote, this would give a hard number, but I can see okay, hey, there's a really steep roof, so it adds an extra $125. We added this igniter that's $600. How does this look? And the customer can say yes or no. If they're like, oh, it's too expensive, the salesperson can say, you know what? Let's bid this without the igniter, and let's change the front out for one that's a little bit more cost effective. And they can just simply go right back to this screen right here and scroll down to the other fireplaces that could work, and they can send that out. So what's awesome too is this is all based on packages. So someone might look at this and say, but what if I'm in a weird situation that I know the chimney package is going to be crazy, or I need a bigger surround? Well, there's a backdoor email that gets sent to the salesperson that looks like this, where the salesperson can actually click on a link that says edit my estimate. And what it will do is it will bring up a cart with everything that is needed for that. So it's going to say, here's all the stuff that was used to come up with this price. Now I might say, you know what? I don't want to go with the Wilmington face. So I'm going to X that out right here. What I can do now is I can scroll down. It's going to show me all the related accessories for that fireplace. So I can say, you know what, we don't want the Wilmington. Let's scroll down and let's go to the artisan face. Let's go to the classic arch. I can just hit add to cart, but you can do this with all the accessories, all the surrounds, and even pieces of vent pipe. So I might look at this vent kit and say, okay, here's a 6DF 304 20K. You know what? I want to add the 25-foot kit. We can click on this link that says add vent kit. We can easily swap that out. We've got about 18 different manufacturers of vent pipe. Let's say I want to add a custom chase pan. I can hit this add chase pan button, put in any dollar amount, any description, right? 36 by 36 chase pan, $750. Hit add to order. And then if I want to, I can add a customer discount. But when I'm all done, I can hit this button that says email quote, and I can do the whole thing again. So what we want to do is make it really easy to be able to give that estimate, but then also update it. And the best part, I know this is long-winded, Mark, but the best part is that once this is done, it sends me an Excel file with quantities and part numbers and prices of everything in the cart. So I know exactly what to copy and paste QuickBooks or into Ephesus or whatever your point of sale system is.
Tim, my goodness, this is awesome. Guys, I hope you are getting this. And Tim, I hope this is a game. This is the biggest game changer I've seen in so long on such a complex thing, because how can you keep up with it all? We're all super busy. We're not hard. And I'm talking from the chimney side, but clearly the hearth side, but we can't keep up with it all. We just fall into these rhythms of what we know. And you've just knocked this. You just exploded the whole thing in a very simple way, which is, brilliant.
Thanks, man.
And we're coming up to the end of our thing and the questions are slowing down, but man, so tell people, I know when I first talked to you about it, you were so busy, you had to wait on onboarding me. And so you have these windows of onboarding.
Yep.
Is that still so? Okay. So here's the question. And I don't know if you want to answer here. Jake says, looks awesome. What's the price?
Yep. Yeah. So I'll tell you two things. One, with onboarding is because of how intentional we want to be with onboarding, there is a wait. So like if you were to sign up today, we're looking at probably November 1st to get you started. Not quite as long as you had to wait, Mark. We're making slow strides and getting faster and faster. But onboarding takes time. So like signing up today, it most likely be November 1st before we got you rolling. The way that we price this out, we've got 3 levels of service depending on what features you want. Basically, it ranges from about $450 a month to $850 a month. And what that's going to give you is going to be 5 licenses. So like, 5 chimney sweeps, 5 salespeople, $450 to $850 a month. Now, every single package I think is going to give you value. I'd say if you have questions, I'd start in the middle. The middle ends up being about $500 a month. It's roughly $6,000 a year. You do have to pay a setup fee of about $1,200 for us to build this out for you. Once you start, your first 60 days are refundable. So like you don't get the setup fee back because we have to absorb a lot of cost to build this for you, but your first 60 days are refundable if you don't think it's a good fit. What we found is that if you figure you're spending $6,000 a year, a fireplace insert is going to, cost $6,000 to install. You probably clear a 50% margin on it. So if you can sell 2 inserts a year because of this, I think it's worth it. We hope that it can help you sell like 100 and make a replicatable system to grow salespeople. So,
real quickly,
$850 a month.
And so if you're there's 2 ways to use this. One, you have you put a link on like my website or anybody's website, so the people can do this on their own at night in their underwear, and they can get a pretty quick estimate. So by the time, the email comes to me, the people have kind of kicked the tires and are figuring it out. So when I send a guy out to verify the estimate, it's really close. I don't have somebody thinking it's going to be $1,000 thing and it's a $5,000. It's a lot better closed. And then secondly, when my guy is in the home, he can open up this process and just go right through it too. So it's both sided. It can work with you and without you, which I just think is brilliant.
So that's exactly right, Mark, is that this can go on your website. Now, on your website, customers never get a hard number. It's always a range, and the language is always padded to say this is, contextual and something coming out to your house. But we had some customers that got, thousands of estimates that have gotten pulled over the last couple of years, and hundreds of in-home visits with customers. Again, like I had a friend in Canada that uses this, and he sends me a text, and he's like 4 hours ahead of me. So he sends me a text at like 11 o'clock at night his time, and he's like, "Hey Tim, this guy just pulled an estimate." I text him back. I'm like, "Oh, that's awesome." Like 15 minutes later, he writes me and says, "Hey, this guy just booked an in-home visit." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's great." Literally 15 minutes later, he's like, "This guy just applied for financing." So he's sitting there 11 o'clock at night selling a fireplace. What we like, this isn't for everybody, and this isn't magic. Like, this system only works as good as the business is willing to train and to use it. We want to be super clear about that. But like, I got to play you this, Mark. I literally got this voicemail. I wasn't going to do this. I got this voicemail literally as I was walking into the Denver airport like a week ago. And this is from one of our customers in a small rural market. And I'm gonna turn this on speaker on my phone super, super loud, and we'll see if you can hear this. This is seriously crazy. So she, well, I can't do it on my phone. Oh, here we go. We'll see if we can hear this.
Hey, Tim, it's Ryan. Hey, sorry to bug you on a Monday. I just wanted to call and tell you I'm on a streak of like, I don't know, 10 or 15 sales in a row based on WhyFire. So I just wanted to tell you how well it is working and how thankful I am for WhyFire. I'm walking into these people's houses and I'm literally selling everything because they are just already prepared by that number. So anyway, I just wanted to hopefully brighten your day.
So like, I love stuff like that. Like,
dude, that is it. That is it right there.
It's not perfect. It's still a work in progress. We're still working out bugs as we go down the path. But what's so cool is to see, like, for her business, she's in a really small rural area with like 40,000 people. So she doesn't get a lot of leads from her website. But for her, she still said the fact that like, customers are qualified. They're inviting me out. And she's on a streak right now of like 10 to 15 in a row. I'm sitting there like pumping my fist saying, yes, come on. 10
or 15 in a row. I mean, that's unheard of. I mean, we hope for 50% close rate on something, you know what I mean? And she's 100% close rate on 15. Dude, this is amazing. I'm so excited for you. I'm giddy. I've put your email up here, and I know that people are going to be very interested in this. Clearly, you got to scale your business to be able to install what you can sell and also get the product. So let me just ask you on the flip side, is there a way to take out products that like you can't get right now? Or is there a way to like, shade them down or put an X over them temporarily? Or how can you handle the crisis that we're going through with supply chain?
Yeah, dude, Mark, you're thinking like 3 steps ahead. That's exactly it. So what our goal for this year is we have every Friday, we do something called office hours, where it's just like an open Zoom call for any of our clients to come in, and like they can get, I mean, honestly, like free consulting. They can bounce stuff off of each other. And as part of that, if there are fireplaces that you don't want shown, you can let us know through that channel or just by emailing us, and we'll just remove them temporarily so that customers don't see it. And vice versa too. Like, if a manufacturer emails you and says, hey, we're having a 5% price increase, you just email us, and like literally, I can't say in 30 seconds, but like within 24 hours, everything's increased 5% or 3%. And you can do that with vent pipe and with fireplaces too. So that way you don't always have to update your point of sale system to make sure you're quoting at the right price. You can guarantee your quotes are going to be accurate right away.
Man, Tim, you're changing the industry, man. You got a great heart. And you're a hardworking guy, and I'm so glad this industry has you. I'm so excited for your product. Is there anything else you need to let people know about this before we close out?
No, man. I mean, I appreciate being here, Mark. I've listened to you for years, and you've obviously built an empire in the industry. So it's an honor to be on your platform. I think if there's one thing to say, I would just say, like, I forget who mentioned it in the comments. It might have been Alan, but just try to remember what it was like be a customer for your products if you've ever bought one before, right? Like, on a scale of 1 to 10 or A to Z when it comes to knowing a lot about fireplaces and chimney, a lot of us are on that like 9 or 10. And because of that, we've forgotten what it was like to be early on in the process, to not be familiar with those words. So very often, even when we try to make it simple, we're speaking at a 6 or a 7 way above our customer's head. So like in everything we do, look at it from the customer's perspective. On my website, I'm in the showroom, when I'm giving someone a brochure, am I speaking at that 1 or a 2 level that the customer is used to? Because again, like, going back to that example, like manufacturers love to tell us, hey, this has 5 decorative fronts and it uses a micro mesh screen and it's got a 2-stage burner. Great. Like all those things are awesome. I'm not complaining about them, but those aren't the reasons people buy a fireplace. We got to get to a more fundamental level and speak to the heart of why people buy.
Tim Reed, you get it. I appreciate you. And I've put your contact information, and I hope you get as much business as you want. And thank you for joining us tonight on SureFire Live.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Thanks a ton for having me.
Yeah. All right, guys, that's our time. I am so excited about that. I hope you are. I'm half giddy. When I first saw it, when my friend showed it to me, it's brilliant and it's new for him. So clearly there's things that he's going to be working through. But this is one of the best inventions for our industry that I have seen come along maybe ever. For us to, I remember several years ago, I worked with a company to try to make it easy for us to bid out prefabricated fireplaces so we could do it in the field. And some people helped me with that, and we used it for years. But this is a whole nother level. It gets it to the customer with a decent bid. It gets to my guys for something really accurate with our pricing. So, man, I am so excited. I hope Tim he's already knocked out of the park. I hope you take advantage of it, and this whole industry wins from that. So, guys, that's our time. Thank you very much. We'll see you next week.